Welcome to the Healing Bitch podcast. I'm Jackie Ortez, a psychic medium that has a penchant for all things spiritual. During this time with me, we will explore the world of energy and how it affects us all. Each podcast will address a question submitted from my listeners that I feel I have the authority to answer. So get comfy, throw on your headphones, and let's see what happens. Hi, welcome back to the Healing Bitch podcast. I'm Jackie Ortez, again, a psychic medium that is the host of this show, and this is episode 2. I want to start this episode by saying thank you. Thank you to everyone that has listened since I published my first podcast, which was last week. The responses and the feedback has been absolutely incredible. Between Spotify and Apple, I think I've gotten about 57 listeners, which starting right away, holy crap, thank you for showing up. This is like a baby of mine. This is something that I've wanted to do for a really, really long time. I went to school for TV and radio broadcasting, and the only thing that has stopped me from doing this for years is this limiting belief that I've had since I was a child. So I've had this limiting belief since I was a child that I shouldn't be seen fully as myself. I don't know where it comes from. It might come from past lives, childhood stuff, but I felt very uncomfortable being pretty in public. And I also felt very uncomfortable being myself completely. I always got looks when I said weird things, and it kind of made me shy away from doing this. So receiving that support from everybody is just, not that I need validation, but it is confirmation, I'm going to say, that I'm doing the right thing. But I do want to say a lot of comments that I received were just about how natural I am behind the mic and how good my voice sounds and all this stuff and how it flows and it's really nice to hear. And yes, those things are great. And I'm so happy to get that feedback. But this was not easy, allowing myself to be seen. The night before I recorded my first podcast, I had such a physical reaction to the fact that I was about to do this. I was laying on my couch. All of a sudden, I started to feel anxious. All day long, I was super excited. I started to feel anxious, and my body started to go into, I'm just going to say, a panic attack. I haven't had one of these in a really long time, but it was basically because I was working against this limiting belief that I've had for so long. I was walking out of the shadows and stepping out of the shadows that I've been in for years and letting myself be seen. I was opening myself up to this whole vulnerability of people listening to me, people commenting about things. And on this podcast, I want to go deep. I don't want to talk about surface stuff. I want to talk about the conversations I usually have one-on-one with my clients. And I want to explore that. So laying on the couch, having this panic attack, I literally I was watching TV, I had to shut it off. I had to put my hands on my chest and I had to close my eyes and I had to breathe deep in and deep out. And I said out loud, I deserve this. I deserve to be seen. I have worked for this. I deserve this. I deserve to be seen. And, it went away a bit. It turned back into excitement instead of panic. But what everybody sees is the end result of the podcast, and they don't see what I went through going up to it. So I wanted to share that because I want to be transparent and I want to talk about my journey. And even though I've been working on myself for years and years now, I've been working on myself basically since I was like 23. So 20 years now. And I've gotten very, very far into being myself. But yes, it sounds natural of me being on this, but this is work. This is inner work for me to be doing this. This is outer work for me to be doing this. If you're watching this on video, I just got some new makeup on at a Sephora last night, which I did myself, and I think I did a pretty good job too. But anyhow, that leads me into talking a little bit more about how uncomfortable it really is in the world, especially this world right now, to be yourself, because there's internet sleuths or whatever they're called all over the place. There's keyboard warriors. You put something on the internet and not only are you're getting the good comments. People comment really good stuff. They're really supportive, or people don't comment at all, but they're still looking at what you're doing. And in their minds, they're still having some kind of opinion. So I can understand, obviously, because I just talked about it, I can understand how hard it is to put yourself out there. Even just showing pictures of your family and staging them the correct way. People are always like, oh, their family's so good and I have all these problems. And you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. You don't know what's happening with other people. I'll just end it with, okay, so after saying all of that, my whole point is everyone is a little bit afraid to be completely who they are, because we live in a world that has judging all over the place. But we're not here on this earth to live in the shadows. We're not here on this earth to live according to societal needs and societal guidelines, let me say, which are basically, you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you meet someone, you get married, you have kids, you retire, save up all your money, work 9 to 5 and die. You're here to enjoy life, not survive. So I want you guys to really think about that and really let it penetrate your mind, because so many people that I talk to are not living in their true way. They're not living life how they want to. And I understand there are parameters when you have children, you do have to sacrifice, and there are other things if you're a caretaker and stuff like that. But you need to find the joy in life. And if the joy is stepping out of your comfort zone and stepping behind a mic like I'm doing, then that's your joy. Or if your joy is, I don't know, posting a piece of art that you've been working on. You've never shared your art with anybody. But the point is, let yourself be you, because there's no other you in this world. And the world needs more authentic people that are happier, because that's what's going to raise the vibration. And that's what's really going to help us all in the long run. So anyhow, now that I went on about that, let me get to the question that came in. So I have finally set up an Instagram that is at the Healing Bitch Podcast. So you can now submit questions there as well. Our next podcast, the subject is death. So if you have any questions you'd like me to answer pertaining anything to do with death, just submit your questions there. So this question says, I am very into the spiritual world and have gifts myself, but I'm nervous to be public about this, even just to my friends. Any advice that you have? This is, I get this question a lot. I get this question a lot in sessions with people. I have people from my past, people from my present, messaging me on my Instagram and having conversations with me about this. Sometimes I have family members even asking how to deal with this. So this is more common than you would think. And the only thing I can say is when I started 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago doing this, it was not nearly as accepted as it is now. People looked at me like I had 15 heads. I understand that they were trying to be supportive, but they had no idea what Reiki was. They thought energy healing was like a complete joke. 7.5 years later, society has made this like gorgeous shift to actually caring about their energy and understanding that it's a part of our health. It's a part of our holistic health, and it actually matters a lot more. So the first thing I would do is basically what I did. So I grew up, my family is mostly Catholic, and what I was doing was a little weird. And I know my mom, as supportive as she is, she wasn't sure how to really take what I started doing. So I started breaking it to her lightly. I would talk to her about a client experience. Like, say I would have a Reiki session. I'm like, oh, isn't this so cool? Like, I knew this person's dad was in Florida and she was going there on a trip. Isn't that awesome? Or I knew this person had like OCD, because while I was working on them, I had OCD and I was obsessive about certain thoughts that I'm not usually. And I just kind of peppered it into the conversation. And after a while, she really came around where she would start to use like the buzzwords, like energy and feeling instead of thinking. And she would mention something about spirit, especially after my father passed in 2020. She would start blaming every time she broke something or broke one of the dishes on my dad. And I told her, I was like, Mom, listen, I understand his spirit's around, but you can't blame everything on Dad every time you break something or something goes missing. And there were a few times actually stuff like appeared out of thin air after she'd been looking for 2 hours in like an obvious spot. And that obviously was him. But start to have like little conversations with people about it. Maybe talk about like what your energy is feeling that day. Be like, oh, my energy feels like kind of weird. Or if you go somewhere, be like, oh, the energy here is kind of weird. People are totally into crystals too. There are total crystal girlies and obsessive, and there's crystal shops everywhere. So maybe go on like a little shopping trip and go into a crystal store and see how they react and be like if you're into tarot cards and stuff, pick up a tarot card deck and just show them and be like, oh, what do you think about this? Like, do you feel like this is real? Or test the waters with how you talk to them and what you say. I mean, like I said, people are so much more open to it. Maybe watch like a witchy movie, see if they like practical magic, or I don't know. I feel like it's so much more accepted now. And people aren't going to look at you weird, even though people still look at me weird. That's true. Sometimes when I mention it, people still look at me like I can't believe I actually know a psychic medium. But anyhow, I don't know if any of that was helpful at all, but I really hope it is. And if you want to, you know who you are. The questions will always be anonymous on here, but if you want to reach out and maybe have, another conversation about it, I'm totally open for it, because the one thing that I have noticed is there is a little bit of a lack of community in the spiritual world. At least that's what I have found. A lot of my friends are really receptive to what I say, but they're not really in the spiritual world. So I can't go super deep with them, which is part of the reason why I'm doing this. So again, hope that was helpful. And if anybody has any future questions for the next podcast, you can send them to the Instagram at the Healing Bitch, right? That's it. Oh my God, my fucking brain. At the Healing Bitch podcast on Instagram. That's where you could submit them. And thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you soon.